Okay, I'll get started. So welcome everyone. Looks like we're calling in from all sorts of different places. So lovely to have you all here. Welcome to this masterclass on Your Time Matters, and it really does so. I value you spending half an hour of it with me today. I've said that what we're aiming for is saving up to 4 hours a week. And the reason I say that is that I've been working with a guy called Cyril Perpignan. He's a French guy that lives in Australia who wrote a book called Work Smarter, Live Better. And we've been working with Boston Consulting Group. And you probably won't meet people who have busier calendars than the partners in Boston Consulting Group. And with some of the strategies that we've shared with them, those guys have saved an hour a day. So that's the potential for you too. This is my opportunity. I've invited clients, past clients, contacts, as well as new people to this masterclass. Many of my clients have been with me for a long time, and this is my opportunity to thank them, not only for being clients, but for recommending me to other people. I get 80% of my work from referrals, so this is really important to me, and this is one of the ways that I can thank you. So thank you very much for that. The focus of today is time. And very often when I'm working with clients, they turn up with a particular issue they want to address. And what we realize is that actually there's no point in addressing that issue until they create the time to do so. So we often end up working on time before we can work on any of the other things. Okay. So it's 5 o'clock in the morning. It's April 2000. It's still dark outside and my suitcase is in the hallway and there's a taxi waiting outside. I'm wearing my smart Armani suit and I'm standing in my children's bedroom, whispering in their ears, "Bye, my precious, Mummy will see you later." I feel torn. Why am I doing this? How are they going to feel when they realize I'm away for another 3 nights? I'm a stranger in their lives. I don't know anyone at their school. What kind of a mother am I? And then another voice inside my head in a rather strident tone says, "You're speaking at the Brighton Conference Centre, positioning yourself and the company as thought leaders. That's why you're doing it. And as you often say yourself, you do it for the children, so they can have a good education and a good quality of life." Yeah, I bolster myself and agree. It's about being significant, about being important, and the lifestyle. That's why I'm doing it. Have you ever made choices based on postponing happiness? Have you ever made choices that put happiness back into the future? And what difference have those choices made in your life? Well, I often hear people say that look after today because tomorrow may never come. And I got that message quite soon after that day. So it's now 3 months later. It's July 2000. I'm in hospital. It's a cancer ward. The nurses are wearing white plastic aprons and face masks, and I can just see their eyes and the concern in their eyes. The day that I left my children tucked up in their beds and went to speak at the Brighton Conference Centre was the day that I discovered that I had cancer. I'm in an isolation room, and yet that voice is still chatting on in my head. Isn't it ironic that your oncologist has made this mistake? It's probably because he's working too many hours, doing his NHS work and maintaining his private practice. Ironic because that's how my life is. I wonder how many mistakes I've made from working ridiculously long hours. This situation was pretty scary for me and for my family. And I really did think in that moment, lying in that hospital bed, that I was going to die. Not of cancer, but from an overdose of chemotherapy. And it really brought home to me that you never know what the world is going to throw at you. And events like this are an opportunity really to really change your perspective on life and on how you use your time. And I started asking myself big questions. What if my life were to end here in this hospital bed? What would I regret? What would people remember about me? Maybe you've asked yourself those questions. So in that hospital room, I realized that something significant had to change in my life. It was so out of balance. I was not only jeopardizing my own life, but the happiness that I wanted to create with and for my children. And so I determined that day to live to see my grandchildren. They haven't arrived yet, so I'm still waiting. And if that were to be the case, I needed a really different definition of success. I was lucky. I came through that chemotherapy overdose. Shortly after that, I sold my business. And in 2003, to help me get through the burnout that the cancer represented, the divorce that soon followed, I trained as a coach. And I developed a really strong why, a strong purpose as a coach to not only help myself live a more balanced life, but to help the people I coach to do so too. So the purpose of my coaching work is to help the leaders that I coach to thrive, and in doing so to create situations and environments in which their people can thrive. So that's why I'm here today talking about your time matters. And that's why I believe that my time matters too. And it's still an uphill struggle, it's still an ongoing effort, but I aim to find that balance in my life. And that's what I want to help you with today. So that's a little bit about me and why I'm here today. So let's move on to you. I did a bit of research earlier in the year with leaders that I'm connected with on LinkedIn. And the number one issue for them was not find the time to work on things that make a difference to the success of their business. And it was interesting because they were very much focused on their business, but it was about making their business more sustainable. And I'll put that in a wider context shortly. So the big question really that you might want to ask yourself is, what's more precious to you? What's more important to you? Your time or your money? And I sort of think of this as it's about your relationship with time, really. And every day we allow ourselves to waste time, and we allow other people to waste our time. And we very often don't complain about it. Time is precious. If we don't spend time with the people and the activities that matter to us, we can't get that time back. It's gone. We can always make more money, but we can't make time. Once it's gone, it's gone. It's not something that you can buy. So it's about asking yourself, what's your relationship with time? As you saw in the story that I just told you, we never know how long we've got. We never know what might happen to our loved ones. So it's about taking control of something we can control, and that's our time. So the mindset that we need to start with is valuing our time just as much as we do our money. It would upset you if someone stole your wallet, yet every day someone steals time from you. So it's having that awareness really, and thinking about how you use your time and why we let people take it so freely from us. So the next question is, what is time management? What's time management to you? Is it about following a schedule that you've put in your Outlook calendar? Is it about ticking things off your to-do list? Is it about arriving on time for meetings? And there's definitely someone in this on this masterclass who used to have a problem with that. That's really about, not really about time management. That's how you use your time and sometimes abuse your time. And really what I'm contending here is that managing your time is about managing your mindset first and foremost. So I'm going to share 5 strategies with you today about being holistic in the way you view your time, about analyzing and allocating time, prioritizing and planning, positivity, and about putting you at the center of how you use your time. We've only got 35 minutes, so I'll be brief, and I'm hopefully allowing 5 minutes at the end for any questions, but do put them in the chat box if you have any as you go along. So, holistic. I'm going to share with you a few ways of looking at this because different things will work for different people. So you could create a clock that represents your life and divide it into the different segments of your life. And I say holistic because very often we focus on our time at work, but we don't look at the bigger picture. And some of you may have used this idea before, but as you write in the segments into your clock of life, then have a little bit of a think about, how do I use my time in that part of my life, and how satisfied am I with it? And if you take the center of the circle as 0 and the outside as 10, then you can draw a line across that segment of the circle and give yourself a score, if you like, as to how satisfied you are with the time allocated to that segment and how you spend it. And so it's sort of creating a vision for the whole of your life. And you can even go further. I have a vision board in my bedroom that I've divided into 9 segments: prosperity or abundance, passion, a partner, health, harmony, happiness, peace, purpose, and people. And I've got pictures that represent all of those areas of my life and what I want for those areas of my life. And the banner across the middle says the best decade yet. So that's another different way of looking at the whole of your life and what you want for it, creating a vision for it. Another way is to think about it in the way that David Whyte, a poet that I follow ardently, I really love his work, and he has a book called The 3 Marriages. And he talks about having a definition, a marriage of marriages that's big enough to contain your relationship with your work, with your significant other, and with yourself. And you can see there that I've put around the outside a purpose. If you can articulate a purpose for your whole life that encompasses all of those 3 relationships, then that can help you find that balance so that none of them is taking too much time from the other. There's a flow between them. And I believe the balance between those 3 relationships is what helps create happiness in the whole of your life. So, I mean, I use that a lot with my clients, and it reminds me of a finance director I was coaching. He was finance director of a luggage manufacturer, and this manufacturer had got private investment from a venture capital fund. It was growing, and he needed to be more strategic and connect with the investors, position the company outside. And his boss, the CEO, said to him she wanted him to save 10% of his time for more strategic issues. And he was a typical expert in his field. He liked to have his hands on the day-to-day detail. And really, he had to think very much about what he spent his time on. And he had a real aha moment when I told him about the marriage of marriages, because he was always in trouble for missing children's sports days and family events. So he really broadened his definition of success, got more strategic about his own life and what really mattered and where he wanted to spend his time. And not only created the time for that, but also the time to be more strategic at work. So the business has grown. It's been very successful financially. He's been successful, but he's happier in his whole life. And more importantly, so is his wife. So that was a great aha moment for him. Another way of being more holistic or looking at the bigger picture for your time is asking yourself, am I fit for the future? Am I employable for the future, if that's what you want for the future? So a book I often share with my clients is The 100-Year Life. It's written by Linda Grattan and Andrew Scott, and they're 2 academics based in London, and they share this thinking with governments and corporate entities all around the world. And really what they're saying is this idea of 3 stages in life of education, employment, and retirements had its day. Many of us will live to 100 and will work for a much longer period than has been the case in the past. And so it's about seeing your life as a multiple series of stages. And so I find myself working with clients of all ages, including those who are finishing work and looking into a phase of, not being fully employed. What do I want for this next period? And how do I want to be preparing for the period beyond that in this current period? So it's really about reframing your life and seeing it as a series of stages. And what's interesting when you think about being fit for the future and being employable in the future is what the recruitment criteria are going to be for the future. And this is a list from the World Economic Forum. And you can see in blue, I've highlighted the things that are sort of cognitive thinking related things. And many of them, cognitive flexibility, the ability to do critical thinking, to problem solve, creativity, all of those linked to the item listed at number 11, which is our learning agility, our ability to rewire our brain and constantly learn new things, is going to be key for the future. So in each phase of our life, it's about anticipating what are the different skills and abilities I'm going to need to not only thrive in this stage, but in the next stage. So have a look at that list of skills there that the World Economic Forum have come up with and see how you compare. What do you need to be focusing on and developing in yourself? What do you need to make time for to make sure that you're future fit? The next strategy is getting clear on what you're actually spending your time on. So analysing your time and then deciding where you want to allocate it. If you've downloaded my free ebook from my website, I think it's called Creating the Time to Lead, you'll have got this template on that you can use to analyse your time, but you can create your own. It's about looking at where you're spending your time every half an hour of the day for 7 days a week, from when you wake up to when you go to bed. And that's the sort of basic information. And if you do that for 2 reasonably typical weeks, then you can analyse it. And then it's about deciding, compared to where you actually spend your time, where do you want to allocate it? So there's a number of theories here that many of you will know about. 2 of them are from the late Stephen Covey. You'll have probably heard the story about the big rocks. So if you've got a jar and you've got some pebbles, some sand, some big rocks and some water, which order do you need to put them in? So if you put the pebbles and then the sand around the pebbles and then the water, and then you try to put your big rocks in, chances are you won't get them into the jar. If you put in the big rocks and then the pebbles filling in the spaces around the big rocks and then the sand filling in the spaces around that and then the water, you'll get them all into the jar. So the moral is that it's about prioritizing the largest, the most important things that you want to get done. This is where the strategy comes in, being strategic about where you want to spend your time. And then all the other things can fall in around that. And you'll also have probably seen Stephen Covey's quadrant 2 time management for 2x2 that's shown here. Again, this is the same idea, analyzing your time and working out what percentage of the time currently are you spending in each of these boxes. And the percentages in the boxes here are those recommended by Stephen Covey for a high performing leader. And that might vary a little bit depending on your role. But really what I'd say is most people aren't spending enough time in quadrant 2, which is on important but not urgent things that make the business or make you sustainable for the future. Most of my clients are spending as little as 5 to 10% of their time in that quadrant, and the bulk of their time firefighting in the important and urgent quadrant. Chances are you are too, so have a look, analyse your time and see where you're spending it. So I've put in the chat box a link where I've put welcome. There's a link in the chat box. I don't want you to go off to it now, but I just want to tell you now, in case any of you leave, that I'll be sharing quite a lot with you today, but what I'm going to offer is 4 45-minute coaching sessions that you can apply for on that link. And you may well get enough from this masterclass today to sort out your time-related issues, but there might be some of you who really have a problem in this area. And so I'm willing to offer 4 free sessions sometime over the next couple of months to suit you, to really get to the bottom of that and set up a strategy that applies all of these things to your situation and helps you make sure you're focusing on the things that make the difference in your life and in your work. So I'll come back to that at the end, but I just wanted to tell you about that now so you're aware that that's going to be available. So the third strategy is about prioritizing and planning. And this is some of the things that we've shared with Boston Consulting Group that I'm going to share with you here. So we said, identify your priorities. This is something that's in the free ebook that's on my website, but it's a really neat way of working out what are your really key priorities. It uses the Pareto principle that 20% of what you do will probably deliver on 80% of what you need to achieve. So it's identifying what those things are that you can focus on that really deliver against your objectives. And this little idea in the center is imagining that you were ill, or for some reason you could only work 2 hours a day. And you had a discussion with your boss and agreed that he would continue, or she would continue, to pay your full salary, even if you were working 2 hours a day, as long as you delivered on the same objectives as you do now. And so it's identifying those things that you need to focus on to do that. That really helps you identify and prioritize where you spend your time and make sure that you're getting the return on that time. And that's really the idea in this return on time invested. It's making sure that your time at least breaks even and gives you benefit back. And if not, it provides a dividend. It really is generative and brings more back than the time that you put in, even if that's in energizing you or in different ways of enhancing your performance, your well-being, your happiness, your health. So it's really looking at it and measuring things in terms of return on the time invested. So some of the things to do in terms of planning your time, and everybody will have different preferences here. So I'm going to just make some suggestions that you can adapt and choose how to use in a way that works for you. So definitely it starts with putting an hour a week into your calendar to actually plan what you're going to do for the week or maybe the 2 weeks ahead. So that's pretty key. That's the starting point. Then it's really developing a principle of thinking about your private life, your personal life first. What are the things I want to make sure I have time to do this week? Is it taking the children to school one morning this week? Is it finishing early on Friday so that I can do something with the family? And scheduling those things in first. Then it's scheduling time into your calendar, meetings with yourself to work on those big rocks, those vital few priorities that you've identified as being strategically important for your life and your work. And doing that at a time that works best for your brain. Most people's brains, when they've got to do thinking time, it works better in the morning. So scheduling time in for doing that sort of big rock thinking type work, probably in the morning, but definitely at a time that works best for your brain. And then it's seeing what time's left. Sometimes you've already got meetings scheduled. So what time's left? And of the things on my to-do list, which can I delegate? Which probably don't need to be done at all? Which can be delayed? And allocating to the following week the things that really are priorities and that need to be done. Not forgetting to allow space to breathe, space to prepare and plan, to have lunch, to be a human being rather than a machine. And the bane of most people's lives that eat our time are our emails. So it's having a strategy for dealing with your emails. You know, the guys at Boston Consulting Group have to be very available. And even so, they allocate 4 slots in the day to deal with their emails. Some of them more, but they definitely don't interrupt themselves when they're working on their big rocks by distracting themselves with emails, because that drains your energy. And it takes a lot of energy to get back to what you were doing. So it's really being disciplined about how you deal with emails. They are other people's priorities. If you run your life by your emails, the chances are you're running your life to other people's priorities and other people's agenda. And I'm a fan of agile working, and what I would recommend, because many of us can't plan a week ahead and just have that as a fixed schedule. Things change on a day-to-day basis. So start each day with a scrum meeting with yourself. Look at your calendar, make any adjustments you need to, but then be disciplined and execute what you've got there. And keep checking in with yourself to make sure that you're on track. So that's a bit about planning your time. The big problem that many people have is saying no. So they often agree to do things that they really shouldn't be doing, that aren't one of their big rocks, that aren't priorities, that aren't one of their vital few. And so I thought it was worth putting a slide in with some tips about saying no. And I'm one of those people that has had trouble with that in the past, I admit. very likely when you do your weekly plan, there'll be more things to do than the time available. So saying no is going to be pretty important. For a lot of people I work with, their automatic response is yes. And then afterwards they think, oh my God, how am I going to do that? So think of the consequences of that. I've lived with the consequences. If you keep saying yes to everything, chances are that you'll burn out. And burnout's not a nice thing. It can take 7 years to recover from a full burnout. So one of the things that I notice with people when it comes to saying no is they're afraid that people will take it badly, that it'll affect the relationship. So a key thing is to separate the saying no from your relationship with the person. You're not rejecting that person. You're just turning down a request to do something. And it's interesting. I coached a lady who was, she was a finance director. She really couldn't say no at all. If we put 2 chairs out, a yes chair and a no chair, she couldn't even bear to sit in the no chair. So what she created, and she actually put this chair in her office, is a consideration chair. So each time someone called with a request, she would say, just let me think about it. And she would actually sit in the consideration chair to decide whether to say yes and what the consequences would be of saying yes. And several clients since her have had this same situation where they've needed to create an opportunity to consider before saying yes or no. And don't be apologetic. You're not asking for permission. Once you say a no in a very clear way, and people understand that you're prioritizing what you need to prioritize, so you don't need to be apologetic. You can't please everybody. You can't do everything. I was working with a partner in a law firm, and I just got a message here. I was working with a partner in a law firm in his 40s who got up very early every morning. He worked late into the evening. He got home and pretended to be present with his family over dinner, and then started work again about 9, and then got up again. Started his day saying yes to everything that came across his desk. His team were disgruntled because he wasn't having time to develop them. He was seen as flapping and always late for meetings by his partners and the people in the firm. And his reputation was really suffering. And he analysed his time, decided what he needed to focus on. In fact, he created a vision for that team to be best in class, and what he worked out what needed to happen for that to be the case, and said no to anything that didn't enable that team to be best in class. And it transformed the situation. It transformed his situation, the motivation of his team, and the performance of that team. So it really is important to identify what matters and say no to anything that isn't important. A good thing to do when you're doing that is to think of all the things you can say yes to that really do matter when you actually say no. And a key exponent of this theory was Steve Jobs. He said in this quote, the most important decisions you make are not to do things, not the things that you decide to do. So it's making the decision what not to do. And someone else at Apple said, saying no to bad ideas is easy. Saying no to good ideas is very hard, and we do that every day. So it's developing a muscle to say no to things that really aren't a priority. Okay, positivity. Positivity is really vital as part of this time management mindset, and I'll explain why. We talked about creating a dream and a vision for your life and what you want to realize, and using your time in a way that helps bring that into reality creates positive momentum and positive feeling in you. If you have that vision, chances are then what you're going to do is focus on the things that you're good at, the things that you want to develop in yourself. Again, that breeds positivity. Whose agenda are you following? I spoke earlier about the emails and whether you're following other people's agenda in the emails. Following your own heart, what you're passionate about, what you really want to achieve, breeds positivity in you. Not listening to that negative inner critic inside you, nagging you and making you work long hours and be busy. Don't listen to that inner critic. Listen to your intuition and the deeper voice that knows really what you want to be focusing on. And really enjoy the moment. If you spend your time in the moment, being fully present, enjoying what you're doing, again, you'll be filled with positivity. You'll be much happier in your life. So why does that happen? Because positive vibes, people pick up on them unconsciously. You generate a vibe, and if you're a leader, that creates the pool in which your people live, the environment in which your people live. With a negative vibe, you pull your people down and they can't perform, and nor can you. A positive vibe opens people up to bigger perspectives, to new ideas, and to enjoying their work and performing better. So if you have a positive mindset, if you do positive things in terms of how you spend your time, you'll have a vibe that creates positivity for everybody else and helps them to perform better as well. And finally, you. Most of the people I coach have been brought up to not put themselves first and not be selfish, I suppose. And really what I say is the starting point is to create the conditions in which you can thrive. Give yourself headspace, time to reflect. Scheduling time for yourself. It's that relationship with you that David White talks about. Look after your own needs, because if you don't, you can't be there for others. You only have one life, so make sure it's working for you. Make sure you're using your time wisely, and make sure that when you look back, that you won't have regrets about how you spent your time on the planet. And this makes me think about a manager I worked with who was underconfident in herself. She had 11 direct reports and very, very committed to her work, but didn't look after herself. She made that her big rock, looking after herself, and got up early every morning to go to the gym. And she lost 2.5 stone in 3 months that I was working with her, I think it was. And not only did she feel better about herself, she was more confident, and she could see more clearly at work what she wanted to do. She restructured her department, created a supervisor who took away 5 of her direct reports, and actually made the time to spend on one-to-ones with her direct reports and on their development. So they were more motivated. She was happier. She performed better. And just making that a priority, making that her big rock, made all that difference. So I said I'd leave time for a few questions at the end. I think we've got a few minutes left. Does anyone have any questions? Please put them in the chat box or unmute yourself. Feel free to ask any questions or to suggest any future topics. I'm hoping to do one of these each quarter, so any topics that you'd value, then put them in the chat box. That'd be great. Anyone got any questions? If you don't want to say it in the group, you're welcome to contact me afterwards anyway. And don't forget to apply if you would want to for a 45-minute coaching session, if you really want to have the time to spend on looking at how you use your time and how you can make a real difference in your own life. So thank you all for attending. It's been brilliant to have you all with me, and I look forward to hearing from some of you in the future. I will follow up with a recording of the session and lots of information to help you apply this. So hope the time's been worth spending with me, and I look forward to connecting with you again in the future.